Hey everybody, welcome to today's training. This is TJ with ShopBot Tools, and we're going to look at machining PVC boards today. And I'm talking about the different type of boards that you can get from Lowe's, Home Depot, your different lumber yards, and there's just an exterior PVC. And what people do need to remember about this stuff is it does have a cellular core. So we'll look at what happens when you cut into the sealed edges and get into it. So what we're going to do today is look at some different brands of this material. We're going to look at bits, feeds, and speeds, and show you a couple of different projects being cut. And again, you can get it in different applications for trim boards, full 4x8 sheets, depending on what it is that you're doing. So let's go ahead and get started. Well, let's get right into it and look into machining these PVC boards. So what is this PVC? It is polyvinyl chloride. You know, a lot of us are used to this stuff and seeing it in the round pipe form, but it comes in trim sizes, sheet goods, pipes. You can get it in all kinds of different, and there's all different types of different PVC boards too. You know, you have your cellular core, your solid core, but I'm covering today what you most commonly find at your local um, supply store. So what's nice about this material is it can go outside and it is going to hold up. It's paintable, it's easy to machine, and it's going to hold up outside. It's not going to rot on you. So we'll look at finishing the stuff as we keep going through this. And this is an example a customer shared with us of raised text where the background is painted green. And then just there's a lot of different brand names of this stuff that you see out there. And I remember when a day when this stuff first started coming out with AZAC, and it was so expensive, and now to go get clear wood, it costs more than buying some of this PVC board. So it's really come down in price, and wood's also gone up in price. But the features that it has for being able to be used outside for a lot of what CNC type people are going to be doing with our signs and whatnot, it's a really nice material for that. Machining this, what we'll look at some different files with some bits and feeds and speeds is we do want to prevent overheating. If we don't get the right feed rate on this, that material does tend to build up onto the bit. It does tend to fill in the kerf of the cut, and it's not going to give you a good cut quality. So we do use an O flute. Tested a lot of different types of materials, different types of bits, different types of cuts on this, but for just the type of cutting that we're generally doing on the CNC machine here, I found that the single flute had a lot better results for what it was that we're trying to be doing here in these next few cuts. And that's that single O flute bit, and you can get that in several different brands. And I just want to point out too that this PVC board that we're talking about, it does have a sealed edge all the way around it, and it's a cellular core. So when we do cut into it, we are exposing the cellular core, which gets rid of that smooth outer finish. So I do want to show you that here. Being that most people are buying their PVC boards from your local hardware stores and whatnot and lumberyard suppliers, I do want to show you on this example here. So what we have is a sealed edge that's on the faces and on the edges. So these are being used for trim boards, so they're typically 1x4s, 1x6s. But the cellular core in the middle is not that hardened, smooth, finished edge. So when we expose that, we do need to make sure we go through the right precautions as far as finishing that. So I just want to point that out to you. Okay, so let's look a little bit into feeds and speeds. First of all, the chip load calculator that's built into your ShopBot 3 software is a really nice tool to have because you can always go in and start referencing, the cutting speed, the spindle speed, and getting your chip load. So earlier I talked about using a single flute bit. So I would change that to the one flute. And then again, this was just after making some cuts and just getting the edge quality that I was comfortable with, that had a good finish. Also looking up what other people are recommending. Also going through Onsrud's website and reading more about the bit manufacturers that make these bits and the feeds and speeds they were using for this cellular core PVC board. So again, you are home with your ShopBot of different eras, different sizes, spindles, alpha standards. You know, there's a big difference between a Porter cable router and a 5 horse automatic tool changer spindle. So you need to remember the capabilities of what your ShopBot is able to cut as far as inches per second, what it specs out at, and then keeping that in mind, you then set up your feeds and speeds. So these were just some safe uh, numbers for you to start out with. A 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch bit. I was limiting it to 2 to 3.5 inch. 2.5 to 3 inches per second, and that was doing real nice. And again, as far as it doesn't show it on chip load here, you just have to look in the tool database for the pass depth was never exceeding the diameter of the bit per pass depth. And I also, for this stuff, just to keep it from building up deep into a kerf, I pretty much limit it to a 1/4 inch per pass anyways, just to keep that chip being clear. That's the whole thing. If you can't clear the chips up out of the kerf of the cut, it's going to start building up heat. The heat's going to start getting the material warm, which is going to start either applying back to the inside the kerf of the cut back to the existing material, or it's going to start holding to your bit. But more than likely in PVC, it's going to just build right back into the cut, fill that cut back up, and then when you come back around to do your next pass, it's going to be too much pressure. And then with the smaller 1/8 inch bit, slow it down a little bit as far as your feed rate, and just keeping that spindle at the higher RPM was getting the best edge quality. So let's talk about finishing here. I will point out, it is one thing I like to do after I cut something is wipe it down with acetone. Just it helps clean the cut before you're going to do any kind of finishing to it. So remember the outer surface of this stuff that you haven't actually cut, that you haven't exposed a cut into the either face or edge of the board. It does have a sealed edge already. Your bigger 4x8 sheets, they just have sealed faces. They won't have sealed edges. So just so you know that if you're going to be painting off the factory edge or face, the outer surface already is plastic compatible for your different types of materials. So the core, once you've opened it up, is not as picky because it's an open pore cellular material now instead of a sealed plastic face, so you can get into a little bit different types of a little bit more variety as far as the finishing route. But really, if you stay with something water based, you are able to it opens up what you're able to use for different types of materials for finishing. And I've talked with people that are really big into sign making stuff. They like this material because obviously it holds up outside. And really getting into, it'd be a good training for the future is just finishing signs, because what you do is a lot of the times you would mask your surface, cut out certain parts of it, paint, and then pull off the masking, and it helps you already get the nice edge on there instead of having to try to knife it in with your with your brush and get a good edge. And then you clear cut the whole sign, because even if there was something that needed to stay white, you have exposed that cellular core, and that if you were to touch that with a dirty finger, or wind blowing on it, or these freshly nicely laid wood chips, that debris will stain that core. So you do want to clear coat the whole sign, and especially you want to clear coat anytime you cut through that PVC face, because you want to seal that sign just from getting debris and stuff down. It's not going to rot by any means, but it's it's just going to show in the face. It's going to show in the finished product. And then let's take a look at these 4 different projects. Let's look at the Vectric VCarve file and see what we did for some feeds and speeds and set them up. And just for keeping the training pretty basic for today of PVC boards, it's just enough to get you out and really get you cutting without breaking bits or ruining material. And then we'll come back and revisit this and get a little bit more advanced later on. So let's start looking at these projects here. Let's start out by looking at the 3D here. So really, there's nothing different that we're doing. This is just a 3D toolpath. It's hard to ever get the correct chip load feeds and speeds when you're 3D carving, because you're using 10% of your bit's diameter, so you're just going to get fine sawdust no matter what. So, but I do like to really show that in the 3D carving, that was the toughest of them all to get a good edge quality. Um, I tried throughout a lot of these different carvings, trying different feed rates, different RPMs, and it's just the nature of the beast being that open cellular core in the middle. It did have a little bit of a fuzzy edge on parts of it. And what I just did was I used my Dremel with a little slap wheel and was able to clean it up. Obviously, rubbing it down with acetone helped get rid of a lot of the different stuff on that. And again, so you do have a big difference there between the finished edge from the factory and then opening up that cellular core. But I was able to clean that up no problem, put a finish on it that I was real happy with. And just to show you in the file again here that it is nothing more than, you know, it's just tough with the 3D carving to get the right feed and speed. So it was just my typical 5 and 5. And again, I was on a ShopBot desktop, so I was changing the RPMs back and forth manually. But I did get what I found a better resolution with the higher RPM. So that was the 3D. The next one I did here was the marble maze, which obviously opens up all of the core and has a couple different pocket depths, and it even has a lip all the way around here. So we put a clear piece of acrylic on there that keeps the ball from falling out. So you can see it's just a marble that goes in there. Here's a clear piece of acrylic that was cut that fits down inside of that lip. Here's the file for it. And again, with this one over here, just your pocket, profile tool paths, and then what I did was use the chip load calculator, and I even, you can see here, went to some shallower pass depths just because I didn't want to have a buildup in the previous cut on the kerf. And again, these, I started out with some lower RPMs. And I ended up changing these to the higher RPMs, and you can see that they reflect what you would get out of the chip load calculator. So the chip load calculator is a good one to use. And also Amsrud, right on their website, if you're going to use their bit, they have a really good explanation on cutting plastics and why you would want to use this 1/4 inch upcut bit and feeds and speeds that go with it. So there is a good set of, and apparently my settings here just got a little bit wonky on how I had this here, and my apologies, that explains this whole, climb convention, chip cutting, as far as if it's a climb cut. And it's a good read. You can get that right from the bit manufacturer's website. But to keep this training on topic with the PVC, let's go and take a look at machining this one. I started out with a 1/2 inch bit because it was a big pocket all the way around. And again, I just threw in the feeds and speeds of the chip load calculator. You're going to find this stuff's very soft and very easy to machine. And as you can see, with no dust collector on, there's a lot of static and dust that sticks to everything. And you can see it's quite a mess when you don't have your dust. So I got to emphasize in this training, have a really good dust collection running on your ShopBot before cutting this material, because it's just a nasty, messy stuff. It's just little fine white particles get everywhere and stick to everything. So leave that dust foot on whenever you can. So it's a fun project to cut. It really is, that little marble maze going back and forth. So again, I cut it out, I rubbed it down with acetone. I wanted to leave this one clear. I just put a little marker in where the start and the finish line was, blew it out with the air compressor so that there wasn't any dust in there. And next, put my marble in there, put the clear acrylic in, just a pressure fit, and sand the edges so they're not sharp as far as around, or put a beveled edge around the outside of these, and just a fun little game for the kids. So, but look at that mess, and that dust getting inside of your mechanics and electronics is not good for anything. So have your dust foot on there and have your dust collection, have a good dust collection for that. There really isn't anything all new and exciting about V-carving. The only thing I would recommend you take a look at before you pull the board off, you can see down inside of my V's, it doesn't always clean it out the best. So I would try blowing that out with the air compressor to see if that's going to come out. If not, sometimes people recommend running the tool path a second time, or you can just get a little fine, like tool prick, scratch all sort of thing, and etch down inside there and pull that out. But what I would recommend if we're going to get into doing a bunch of finishing here is before I even was to carve this out, this V-carve, I would have recommended masking the whole top of that off first, and then V-carving it, painting that, and then being able to pull the masking off, and the finishing already would have, I've been able to just paint down inside there. So that's just your regular V-carve. Textures are always a fun one to cut because they're fun to watch, and the results that you get are always pretty neat. So here's just a close-up of cutting in, and you can see that it is an open, porous, cellular core, but it machines great. And blowing it off and rubbing it down with acetone, you can see that it is it has a real nice edge quality to it, nice, real sharp edges, and it takes a paint real well and fills in real nice. So real happy with this material. Let's just take a look at it cutting here. And again, it's just a 3D carve. You are going to get a little bit of fuzzies. That's why you can always run again, with the dust collector on, you should have, you blow this off at the end. It has a pretty good job of cleaning off all the different fuzzy material on it. So again, a texture toolpath, we looked at a pocket toolpath. We've looked at doing, the regular toolpaths that we're doing with our wood and plywood and stuff that we've already been cutting, but grabbing the texture toolpath or whatever it may be, all we're doing with this machining of PVC board, it's nothing to be afraid of. It's really pretty basic stuff. It's going in, using the tool calculator and getting chip load correct. And what you're finding here with V-carve or texture or even 3D, that the tool, the feeds and speeds isn't going to be as crucial because of the type of cut that you're doing. But with the profile in the pocket, you can go in and select that, and then it's built right in here underneath your tool database. So this one's just a texture that we messed with. To learn more about the texturing toolpath, there's a whole thing underneath help contents in the video about setting up and working with textures. So for today, training on doing the cellular core PVC board, just a recap on a few things. It's a nice, soft, easy material to cut. It's paintable. It's never going to rot. It does great outside. Using the O-flute with a single edge gives you the best edge quality. There's some feeds and speeds on there that were recommended for you to start out with. I'd always advise you to use your chip load calculator. There's several different brands of this stuff that you can use. A lot of people, refer it as Sintra just because that's the brand name that's been around, but it's actually, that's just the brand name of this cellular PVC board. Really what we're trying to do when we're cutting this is prevent the overheating and rewelding of the chips, which you're not going to see in certain cuts like 3D carving, but you are definitely going to see with your textures profile pocketing. So that's why we make sure we cover that. Finishing this stuff, I would recommend that whenever you expose the inner core, you're going to want to put some sort of a finish on that, and please refer back to the PowerPoint for that. And also you see it in the toolpaths of these files, is it's always better to have a ramp in the toolpath than a straight plunge when you're doing a profile or pocket toolpath. It's just it's a better type of entering of the material for this type of material, and in a lot of cases that is. So and then wipe it down with acetone before you get into finishing. And here's a couple different samples for you to mess with and try out machining these PVC boards. And if you're new to all this CNC work with your ShopBot, and you heard some terminology today and some processes or different concepts that we just kind of brushed over, for more information, visit our website. Our website is just full of information. We have a whole area just dedicated to support and terminology, and there's a whole thing on training. You've always got the Vectric website for the questions about the software, why it's doing what it is. What is this texture toolpath? How did I set that up? They have wonderful tutorials on that. But if you're just getting started with this and you just watch this, I tried to keep this one pretty basic for people today because it's a neat, easy material to start cutting with, and you get really wonderful results as far as making a sign and being able to put that outside. So get online, get educated, get signed up for our newsletter. Come to a training here at ShopBot, or check around and see where we're going to have a camp or something in your area. And we'll see you next time when we do one of these online trainings. So have a great one, and thanks everybody for attending today.